We were sitting in the car on the way to the airport. I looked at my wife, Sonia, sitting next to me and asked her, "Why do you really need to go this afternoon and not tomorrow morning? Or would you rather rearrange the whole situation at work?" She looked straight in front of her and said with a sigh, "I've already told you there are two reasons. First, I have to start work on Monday morning, and second, I need the whole day to get all the work done in time." My wife is an accountant. She works for a chain of stores selling high-end women's clothing in trendy boutiques in a large number of shopping centers. There are now 6 stores in the Chicago area, and she spends one day at each store during the week and then goes back to St. Paul, where we have a house. So she does 1 week, and then for the next 3 weeks she works in the main office here. Every 4 weeks she repeats this pattern. I'm tired of it. When you started working this schedule, Sonia, you would leave St. Paul on Monday morning and come back late Friday night. Why can't you at least go back to that schedule? My workload has increased, Bob. The number of stores has gone from 5 to 6, and I've been offered 1 day off a week to make up for it. Plus, the pay is good. I prefer to continue working the way we do now. What about Sunday, Sonia? We could at least spend it as a family if you came home on Saturday. I've already told you, Bob, that Saturday is the last day I work at the store. I get tired, and I need rest. I've made a lot of good friends in these 3 years. Every 4 weeks they put on some kind of event at the end of the week when I am there, and I enjoy taking part in some relaxing Saturday evening meeting or Sunday walk or lunch. I enjoy it, and as you know, it is almost exclusively female company. No clubs or any nightlife here. Just a friendly and relaxing time for me. You didn't object to it before, Bob? No, I didn't mind. But our situation has changed, Sonia. The boys are teenagers now, too old to hire babysitters, too young to be left alone. We have to be there for them. They're everywhere, and they need a safe home. When you're home, it's fine. But when I'm all alone, I'm bound hand and foot. It's hard for me to make it to all their activities and have to stay put and be available to them the rest of the time. My free time is fragmented and I can't get out of the house for long periods of time, like to go to a concert or play or something. I and the whole family need you to be home more often, Sonia. Please find another job or talk to your boss to make a change. We were already pulling up to the airport, and for the last 5 minutes we were both silent. I expected Sonia to be thinking about what we had discussed, as I was. As I pulled up to the domestic departure area, Sonia turned to me and said, "Bob, you were talking about family relationships and where our ancestors came from. I wonder what made them emigrate and move from their native countries not so many generations ago. Why not make this your hobby? All the research could be done from your home computer on the net. The boys could get involved. They are very fond of this, it must be said, horrible but useful machine. It could fill in those fragmented moments you say you have, and give you some interesting entertainment on top of that. What do you say?" With that last sentence or question, she kissed me, and, after saying, "See you next Sunday," she pulled her bag out of the car and, with a friendly wave and smile, walked toward the exit. After a busy Monday morning at work, I met up with my good work friends for lunch at the corner cafe in our building. It was a busy place, not much for conversation, but I tried to mention my wife's suggestion about family research anyway. Frank immediately picked up on the topic and told me that he was very interested in researching his family. He said that he was able to find out that one of his great-grandfathers came from Ireland in the late 1840s. He was now researching his wife's family background. He had an assumption that her family came from Scotland because McGorman was there, but he was unable to find any information about him in any of the immigration records. Still, he kept searching. "I use a program called Family Tree Maker. I can recommend it," he said. "If you purchase and download this program, I can come to your house this afternoon and give you a crash course. You can use it yourself, though. It's almost self-explanatory." "Thank you for your advice, Frank. I will see what the program is and whether I find it interesting. If I buy it, I'll definitely like the short course. It will probably give me a good start. Later that evening, I found the program Frank recommended, made the purchase, and downloaded it. The next day, I told Frank about it, and he offered to come over after dinner that afternoon and give me his express course. Sitting in my little home office, Frank beside me, I opened the program I had purchased. Frank pointed to the screen and said, "Go to the Start a New Tree box. Fill in the fields with your name and your parents' names, then click on the gender field, of course. Confirm your gender, then enter when you were born, place of birth, and finally give your tree a name. After that, click Continue, and your name will appear on the right-hand side with the information you provided. You add your spouse, date of marriage, and at the top where you see a little picture labeled Add, click on it, and you can add, among other options, your children." The training went on for about an hour when Frank told me that the course was almost over and you were on your own, and pronounced, "You have now filled in information about what you know and the relationships in your immediate family, 25 in all. As you can see, you are missing many details, such as place of birth, date of birth, and so on. You can make a few phone calls or write them a letter, and they will give you the information you need. But before you finish the job, take a look at your dashboard and click on the Publish button. You'll see a variety of options. You may decide you want a descendants chart to see which person you will start with. Again, go to the toolbar and click on People. On the left, you will see a list of all the names you have entered. You may decide to start with your grandfather, Robert Miller, so click on that. Then you go back to the publication, double-click on Descendant Chart, and you see his descendants on the screen. That was very interesting, Frank. Thank you very much. I hope you'll be able to take me through more on another evening, but it's given me a good start. My pleasure, Bob. After you have familiarized yourself with the program, the next lesson will be about finding information on the net. You need to become a member of Ancestry. They will give you access to church records, immigration records, and many other needed sources of information. The rest of the week was busy as usual. I worked late into the night on my family tree. I called my mom and got a lot of information. I sent a few emails to cousins, and by the end of the week I had all the information I needed on my tree of 25 people. I looked forward to my next lesson with Frank. Sunday came, and I was a little annoyed that Sonia was traveling every 4 weeks. So when I found out that our local basketball team was playing a late-night game, I asked the boys if they wanted to go. They were of course excited, but asked, "What about Mom, who will pick her up at the airport?" "I'll send her a text saying she has to take a cab, and on the way home after the game, we'll buy Chinese food." The game went the way we wanted. Our team won by a good margin, and after picking up Chinese food, we headed home. Sonia had probably arrived shortly before us, as we caught her in the kitchen setting the table. I expected her to be a bit rude, but to my pleasant surprise, she hugged me and the boys with the words, "I hope you had fun, and it was a good match." The boys excitedly told her about the match and barely had time to breathe as they recounted what had happened to them during the week of her absence. Once the excitement subsided and there was peace and quiet in the house, Sonia and I were able to relax, cuddle, and catch up on the week of solitude. Her kisses and loving arms soon sent us to the bedroom, and already in bed I realized one of the reasons why I loved her so much. The next 3 weeks went by too fast for my taste. Sonia was a loving wife and mother of 2 active teenage boys, and the house was a very good haven for our family of 4. We both watched the boys' activities. We were proud of them. They were good boys. I was able to spend some time on the computer, and Frank came over and gave some good and useful lessons on finding family information on the net. Sonia brought me up to speed on her side of the family and was very impressed with my efforts to put together a family tree. She promised me that she would talk to her relatives and find out details about where and when they lived. At the end of 3 weeks, with her help, we had mapped out 45 people. One important task I tackled on Monday while Sonia was in Chicago. What to do about Grandpa. His father told me that his mom died when he was 3 years old. He was raised by his father, my grandfather, alone. Grandpa never married, and I remembered him as a very reserved, quiet man. I knew his wife, my grandmother, was named Anna, but he never told us anything about her except that she was Italian. Before Sonia left for Chicago, she told me that as usual she had prepared 5 dinners for us for the next week. During her 3 weeks in the house, she made 7 dinner servings for 5 days, which was 5 dinners that she put in the freezer for us. One day she suggested we order pizza, and to my pleasant surprise, she told me she would be home on Sunday so early that we could go out for Sunday dinner together. As we drove to the airport, I repeated almost verbatim the arguments I had voiced a month earlier. Only in different wording, but the point remained the same. She actually said she had thought about it, kissed me, and as we pulled up to the check-in area for departing flights, said, "I love you," and waved lovingly as she walked through the doors. Sonia's thoughts. After boarding the plane and finding my seat, I sat and pondered what Bob had said. Admittedly, I hadn't taken it seriously last time, but this time, probably because it lay subconsciously in the back of my mind, I did. My first year in Chicago, I was very lonely. I spent long evenings alone, pining for my wonderful husband and children. On Friday nights, I couldn't get home to St. Paul fast enough. Then I gradually began to make friends with the people running the stores and their respective social circles. I began to enjoy their society, and my stay in Chicago became more enjoyable and a distraction from home life. When invitations for Saturday meetings and an extra store to work came up, I began to return to St. Paul not on Friday, but by the latest flight on Saturday. Gradually, the pattern became more regular, and eventually I began returning to St. Paul on Sunday at noon in the winter months and late afternoon in the summer months. As the plane flew to O'Hare at 25,000 feet, I sat in my seat with my eyes closed and thought about the friendly people I met, the friendly parties in the winter season, and the summer meals and trips to one of the many wonderful parks. I was really having a good time. When I came home, I was always full of energy and able to give lots of love to my family. Back to Bob. On Monday, after tucking the boys in for the night, I decided to spend a couple hours looking for details about my grandfather. My dad told me that my grandmother died when he was 3 years old. I started by searching the Grave Search Index for all the St. Paul and Minneapolis cemeteries I could find. Nothing turned up, so, puzzled, I set out to search the church records. An hour later, I found their marriage records. Anna Rossi married Robert Miller on April 23, 1949. After some more time, I found additional information that made me think my father was wrong. Was wrong that his mother died in '53 when he was 3 years old, and I discovered even more surprising details. It was almost midnight when I stopped searching and went to bed. What I found made me think that there are many possibilities of what really happened in those days, and some of them are not very pleasant to contemplate. Because of this, my sleep became restless. I spent most of the night tossing and turning in my bed. On Tuesday, and also on Wednesday, I continued my search. What I had started on Monday materialized, and some questions seemed to be answered. The next day, I decided to call my father and ask him some tough questions. This had me worried. I knew that if what I found was true, it would be a blow to him and upset him. I didn't sleep well. At lunchtime, Frank came over to my desk and said, "Get your ass in gear, Bob. Let's go to lunch." "Could you get me a sandwich? I need time for a private conversation, so I'll stay here and eat if you'd be so kind as to bring me something," I replied. "Something to do with your family tree project?" "Yes, I need to talk to my father about some complicated matters. He'll be home. He was offered and accepted early retirement 6 months ago. I think he'll have time for me." "Good, I'll see you in an hour then." "Dad, it's me, Bob." "Good to hear from you. Is anything wrong since you're calling from work?" "No, I don't think so. I have a few family-related questions for you. You know Sonia had me do some family research and Mom gave me information, dates, etc. on aunts, uncles, and cousins. You told me that your mother died when you were 3 years old, and I know that Grandpa never remarried, so your side of the family is pretty much empty. I have information that this may be, I repeat, may not be entirely true. Could you find a piece of paper and a pen to write down a few things that might interest you? I'm sitting at my desk, pen and paper within reach. Go ahead with your questions and any information you have. First off, Dad, do you have a middle name you don't use? A long pause, and then, yes, I do. Is it Rossi by any chance? Yes, it is. Why don't you use that name since it's your mother's last name from birth, isn't it? Yes, it is. My father didn't want me to use it, and I'd forgotten about it. It was so long ago. Did your father ever take you to the cemetery to show you your mother's grave? No, he never took me there, and I never asked. When Grandpa died in '66, I was 16. I remember thinking it was odd that he wasn't laid to rest next to Grandma, who supposedly died in '53. According to you, he lived all his adult life at the same address and went to the same church. Didn't that surprise you? Yes, it did surprise me. I asked the parishioner about her grave, but he tried to find it, and after some research told me that she wasn't buried there at all. Yes, it surprised me, but I didn't do anything about it at the time. You should have, Dad, because I believe your mother, Anna Rossi, died in St. Louis, Missouri, just 13 years ago, at the age of 80. A long pause, and then, what are you saying? Please repeat. I don't understand. I'm sorry, Dad, but unless there were two Ann Rossis born on the same day, your mom lived to be 80 years old. I could be wrong, but I don't think that's the case. In the church records, I found that you were baptized at 1950, but I discovered even more that Anna, née Rossi, and Robert Miller baptized a boy, Benjamin Rossi Miller, in 1952. Then a year later, Anna disappears with her 1-year-old son Benjamin and leaves her husband with you to raise him. I find that very disturbing. I wonder what happened. After another long pause, when my father said nothing, I asked, "Did you understand what I told you?" "Yes, but it's too much to take in." "I understand, Dad, but please write down all the details I've given you. And also keep in mind that I found Anna's obituary, which says, survived by her son Benjamin, 2 grandchildren, and 2 great-grandchildren." "What now, Bob?" "I found a phone number for Benjamin Rossi, who lives in St. Louis. Of course I could call him, but I think you should do it. He might have some information about what happened. In '53. If, and I repeat, if his mother Anna Rossi is really the same Anna Rossi as your mother. Please allow that this could all be a coincidence and be careful how you present it to him." He agreed that he would discuss it with my mother, think it over, and call him after work today. I spent the rest of the day like a hot coal, restless and testy. I really hoped that my dad had gotten through to Benjamin and that it was good news. This whole situation with my grandmother's disappearance so many years ago was unsettling. After dinner, the boys and I cleaned up the kitchen, loaded the dishwasher, and I sent the boys off to do their homework, anxiously waiting for Dad to call back. Around 8, the phone rang. "Bob, you were right," he muttered into the phone, as soon as I answered. "Wait, Dad. Please calm down and tell me everything in order, please." I called Benjamin Rossi. He was very happy to hear from me. We talked together for a long time, and I told him my side of the story you told me today. We talked for, I think, almost an hour, and then your mom took over and talked to his wife Claire for another hour. It sounds like they became best friends. Did he know about what happened in '53? Yes, he knew. But only a few weeks before his mom died? Or should I say, our mom. In the last few weeks, she started telling him that she had a son 2 years older than him. How her husband demanded that she leave with her illegitimate son. You see, her husband had confronted her with the fact that everyone in her and his family had dark hair and brown eyes. He couldn't accept that the little boy Benjamin was his son, because he had light curly hair and the purest blue eyes. And then he threw her out? She confessed that she was having an affair with a farmer's son who had Scandinavian roots. As you know, Minnesota is full of them, both farmers and Scandinavians. That makes him my half-brother. We have the same mother, of course, but not the same father. He didn't just divorce her and arrange for joint custody of you, he literally kicked her out. That's tough. They were Catholic. You know divorce was impossible. He demanded she leave town and go back to her maiden name. That's why they Rossi. She left, came home and lived with her parents. She told everyone in St. Louis that she was a widow and that Benjamin was her only son. After a short pause, he continued. That stubborn and cruel man robbed me of my mother and corrupted me. As I said, I only experienced true love and pleasure in life after I met and fell in love with Mary, your mother. She taught me how to be a man who knows how to give and receive love. You have no idea how she changed my life. At least Benjamin grew up in a loving family. He was showered with love from both his mom and grandparents. He told me he had a happy childhood. It wasn't until later, when his mother got older, that he noticed she was sad. Then, as I said, came her confession. She died without ever meeting her first son after she was forced to leave him in '53. It makes me so angry I could scream, "Bob!" I hate the memory of my father now. I wish I'd had the courage to stand up to him when I was old enough to stand on my own 2 feet. I was a coward. I avoided the confrontation I knew was coming. Okay? I have to forget. It's water under the bridge. Now what? I need more information about his family, Dad. Do you think it's okay to call him? Oh, yes. He's expecting you to call. He's very interested in your family research, and he'd like to be kept in the loop. He will, of course, give you all the details he has. Please give him a call. Then that's the next step, Dad. I'll call him tomorrow or Saturday. We'll talk after I talk to him. It was nice talking to you, Dad, and tell Mom I said hi for me, will you? I will, and again, thanks, son. Good night. Saturday, around noon, I got through to him. We had a long and fruitful conversation, and he more or less confirmed what he had told my father and added the details I needed about his children and grandchildren. His daughter was living with her husband and children in St. Louis, and his son Jack had moved to Chicago. In response to my question about his son's current relationship, he said, "My son Jack is a bachelor, and he hasn't had much luck with romantic relationships so far. He has gone from one girl to another in the past, but it didn't last long. Claire and I are starting to get a little worried. A few months ago, he informed us, much to our displeasure, that he had gotten a married woman." Grinning, I replied, "You don't approve of your son elbowing his way into someone else's marriage?" By the way, I fully support that point of view. "Do you know this woman?" I asked. "No, she lives with him, but she travels a lot. When he comes to visit, he's always alone," he replied. "Ben, it was nice talking to you. I think I would like to get in touch with your son. Could you give me his contact details?" Having obtained the required details, we ended the conversation with the usual phrases about keeping in touch and hopefully meeting up soon. Shortly after I finished my conversation with Ben, my wife called and said she would be coming home tomorrow morning on the first flight out of Chicago. She would be arriving and we could have lunch together and then do something with the family in the afternoon since I had a proposal. I decided to set aside a whole day for this. We packed up, took everything we needed for Sonia, picked her up at the airport and drove to Lebanon Hills. There we spent a beautiful day at the park, had lunch and a relaxing afternoon in nice weather. The next 3 weeks with family went well. Sonia was a loving mother and spouse, and I felt blessed to have such a wonderful woman as my partner. The only drawback was the 4th week in Chicago. I didn't work on family research when she was home. I was putting it off for evenings when she wasn't home. Sonia's reflections. On the way to the airport, my husband brought up home again. Was I really enjoying my time in Chicago more? It dawned on me, I really no longer enjoy my Chicago weeks as much as I used to. Should I quit my job or ask my employer to give me another assignment? The next thoughts made me shudder. What I'd started with Jack a few months ago was wrong. I should have given it up. I didn't love him, but he had solved the problem of loneliness. I thought, if I don't think of him for a second while I'm at home, doesn't that prove it's not worth it? I can't risk my marriage for this. I tell him that this week will be his last, and I talk to my boss and ask her to find another accountant to work in Chicago. With that decided, I leaned back in my chair and enjoyed the rest of my flight. Back to Bob. On Monday, I sat at the computer again, this time delving deeper into researching the Rossi family. I found out that my Grandma Anna's grandparents emigrated from southern Italy shortly before World War I. They ended up in St. Louis, where they owned a small Italian restaurant. When Anna went to stay with her parents in St. Louis, maybe they kept the same restaurant? We'll have to ask Ben the next time we talk to him. The next day, my boss came to work and asked me to go to a supplier in Chicago. There was some trouble with the parts supply. I asked my mom to come to our house Thursday morning, send the boys to school, and be there when they got back and serve them dinner. I would leave early in the morning and return in the evening. That way I would have almost a full day with the vendor. I thought about calling Sonia and arranging to meet for lunch later that day, but decided to contact Jack Rossi and meet with him if I had time. Everything went well with the vendor, and I finished the job at 2 in the afternoon. I called Jack on his cell phone, and he was happy to hear from me. He suggested I take a cab to his home address, and he himself would interrupt his workday and meet me there at 4. Then we would have about an hour before I needed to go to the airport. Jack turned out to be a nice guy in his 30s, obviously fit and well-to-do. He told me that his girlfriend was arriving soon, and he wanted me to meet her as well. We got to talking, and I told him about my family research, how I'd found out that my grandmother hadn't died, but had been kicked out of the house when she'd had a child fathered by someone other than my grandfather. How bitter he was, how it ruined my father's childhood, devoid of a mother's love. At the end of the story, I heard someone standing at the door. Jack jumped up and said, "That's my girlfriend Sonia. I'm so excited to introduce her to my new cousin." A cold shiver suddenly ran down my spine. A married woman, traveling a lot. Sonia? It couldn't be, could it? It could. She stood in the doorway. Jack smiled and said proudly, "My newfound cousin Sonia." I'm sure my face turned white. It looked like all the blood had drained out of it, and Sonia just collapsed silently. Jack looked puzzled. "What happened? Why did she faint?" I just looked at him. I'm sure he could see the tears rolling down my cheeks as I replied, "That's my wife." As I left the house and walked over the pile that was Sonia on the floor, I looked at Jack and told him not to contact me and to tell Sonia not to come home. This was my one and only time I got to talk to my cousin in Chicago, I thought. I blocked his number. I allowed my controlling mother to ruin my marriage and did not listen to my wife's concerns. Now she is packing to start a new life alone, a family torn apart. I'm a 36-year-old man, and my wife is 28. We've been married for 4 years, together for 6, and we have a year-old daughter whom I adore. She is one hell of an amazing wife and mother. On the other hand, my mother is completely unreasonable. My wife then joined in and helped me come to the realization that my relationship with my mom is toxic. Everything has to be micromanaged, including our wedding, by my mother. I got my wife to support my mother's plans, and she's still angry at me for it. My wife feels similarly about my mother and hated my mother's passive-aggressive mentality from the time we started to date. I must also confess, I haven't been as hard with my mother as I might need to be. The final straw. This brings us to yesterday. It was our anniversary, our wedding anniversary. We're new parents and our jobs aren't the best, making it tight on money at the moment. I proposed we find a friend of the family who would sit with our daughter, buy a good bottle of wine, make dinner, and stay home. I could tell my wife was disappointed we couldn't do something more special, but it was what she felt was the best option, after all. We returned just before 6 p.m. My mother instructed her to speak while my mother was on her way home from work, saying it was an emergency. She was crying and pleading for me to come over. Now it was 5:30 p.m., but I live in a low-traffic area, and I thought I could make a quick pit stop to calm her down before rendezvousing with my wife. When I came home, my mom was sitting on the couch, drinking wine and watching TV. I was furious. She was composed, nothing like the panic-stricken person I'd spoken to over the phone. I asked what the emergency was, then reminded her that it was my wedding anniversary. She said she needed help around the house, washing dishes, watering plants, cleaning gutters, tasks she could have done on her own. She guilted me into not staying, even screeching that I was a bad son. I messaged my wife, said I would be late. She didn't respond. Finally, I'd had enough by 7:30 p.m., and I told my mom I needed to get out. The breaking point. My wife wasn't home when I got back. I called and texted and got nothing. I checked her whereabouts and saw she was at her parents' house, perhaps 20 minutes away. She returned at 11 p.m. I tried to offer her some champagne, which she said I should keep. She was getting a divorce, and I was like devastated and heartbroken. I asked why, and she said this was the breaking point. She thought that I was putting my mother before her all the time, even on our anniversary. When I begged her to go to counseling, she wouldn't. She mentioned that she had to focus on herself and stop caring about me putting my mom first. She moved into the guest room and barely talked to me. The next morning, as I was leaving for work, I tried to kiss her goodbye and she pulled away. My goal is to save our marriage, but she says it can't be repaired. I'm worried that she has already spoken to a divorce attorney. Facing the truth. Some of the comments to my last post were brutally honest and exactly the kick in the butt that I needed. It was inappropriate of me to ask my wife, who I was seeing as well at the time, if there was someone else. And it was one of the last straws for her. I kept trying to give her space, but the tension built up. When I asked to talk about it, she slammed the door in my face. Then my mom dropped in uninvited, which she does quite a bit. My wife opened the door and put me in charge of handling my mom. When I got there, it was too late. My mother was screaming at my wife, who slammed the door in her face and went upstairs. I finally told my mom she had to go, but she wouldn't leave until I threatened to call the police. A new reality. The next morning, my wife took her stuff and took our daughter to her parents' house. She said she is done with the treatment and needs a partner who will stand up for her. She says she understands I'll always prioritize my mom, that there's nothing I can do to be made right. I'm devastated. I've lost everything that mattered to me in 48 hours. I'm on everything of my mom, and I've installed a home security system to get her out. I've started therapy, realizing I need to fix myself, not just to try to save my marriage, but to become a better person. Now my wife and I are going through a trial separation. It's the only communication she has with me that isn't about our daughter. I carry so much guilt. But I'm under the impression that I must still try to be a good father, even if my marriage isn't redeemable. And thanks to everyone who offered advice, I have an opportunity to start anew, and I'm focused on that, because it's important, even if it's painful. My mother's behavior. But my mother has watched our daughter a few times. My wife didn't allow my mom come over and babysit me alone, but she did allow my mom to see me for supervised visits. And as for the creative comment in the letter, I'm not sure what to make of it. It's not a direct threat, and it is disturbing. My wife is worried, and I've told her I will do anything I can to help her. But we still don't know how to proceed. Should we get a restraining order? Do we write the letter up as a record for the evidence but leave it out of our analysis? I think we need to tell the police so that there's a paper trail. Taking action. Update. I've blocked my mom on all forms of communication, and also my wife has. We've also had to lock down everything from my in-laws' house to our daughter's pediatrician to her social security number. As for the threat, we're consulting with a lawyer about the legal side of this. For now, it is day by day for my wife, daughter, and me. My mom has been trying to go to my wife's work this morning to confront her. She showed up out of nowhere and insisted on seeing her. When my wife's secretary refused to do so, my mom threatened to call the police on my wife's secretary. We're documenting everything and thinking of moving to get more distance. Next, I'm afraid she'll show up to my job, but I've informed my boss, and he has been understanding. A kind Redditor told us we should work to get our home ready for a potential CPS home visit, and that's what we are doing. Better safe than sorry. Thanks again for the advice. It's been a long, hard road, but I'm starting to see the light. My mother may have destroyed my marriage, but I refuse to let her destroy my family any further, especially when she threatened to take my daughter away. Moving forward. Hello, everyone. I think this will be my last post for a couple of weeks. Nothing's wrong. We're just preparing for my wife's birthday. Because I messed up our anniversary, I want to do this correctly. With Halloween just a few days away, we're also working on our daughter's costume, putting up decorations around the house, and embracing fun seasonal activities. I'm realizing I like this time with my family a lot, without my mother overseeing everything. Well, this is how it should have always been. My mother is trying to get around our no-contact rule, however. She recently sends me a work email. The subject line was professional, but when I clicked into it, I was greeted by topless photos of her and phrases like, "Where's my sweet boy?" I was aghast and immediately forwarded the email to our lawyer. I did block the new email address and reported it to my boss, who is aware of my mom's behavior. Fortunately, he has been encouraging. A mother's escalation. I'm scared my mom is having a mental breakdown. My therapist calls this escalation, and I fear what she's going to do next. Do you need to contact Adult Protective Services? I'd appreciate any advice. It's my wife's birthday this weekend, so we're looking to unplug and spend some time in nature. The good news is that they haven't made any major consequences in a long time, just some unmarked letters coming to my house every now and then. We have made copies for our records and sent to our lawyer. My mom and I still do not speak, but we're considering moving to another house. However, my wife is hesitant to make long-term plans with me as she doesn't know what our future will be. As this was a hard decision, I respect her choice, a mother's desperation. My mom came over to our house a little while ago in a frenzy, shouting and crying for me. Previously, I would have maybe allowed her in, but this time I called the police. They told her to leave, and eventually she did. I feel conflicted. She is my mother, but she has been so toxic. My mom ended up in a psychotic episode outside our home over Thanksgiving, leading to self-harm. We called the police again, and she's at a mental health facility now. The end of my marriage. I am married, and my wife has decided to continue with the trial separation and divorce. She says we've been playing house to save face, and the stress has taken a toll on her mental health. She's moved back in with her parents, and she wants to consult our lawyer about our options. I'm disappointed but respect her decision. When I asked if the bad times over the past couple of decades outweighed the good, she looked at me straight in the eye and told me that mostly it had been a negative relationship. Understanding the past. I've learned in therapy that my mom views me as her husband, something my therapist describes as emotional incest. There were moments where it escalated to inappropriate physical behavior, which I've suppressed until now. Truth hurts, and I'm beginning to come to terms with it. My therapist believes my mom never actually processed my dad's death, and therefore made me her emotional partner. This may go some way to explaining her poison towards my wife and other girlfriends. A new beginning. I'm upset that the manipulation that my mom was involved with stole a normal life from me, but I'm optimistic about the future. I'm 30-something years old and still have a lot of time to create a great life and be a great father to my daughter. It was only a hint, seemingly innocuous, and he took little notice of it. Business forced him out of town, and as usual, he left a detailed itinerary with Susan, his wife. As usual, she kept him informed of her schedule in detail. After so many years together, it was automatic. And so on Thursday morning, the deal unexpectedly came together. The people he had negotiated with signed off by 11 a.m. and flew out to deal with a crisis in one of their East Coast divisions. Early, a friendly, sunny man with a permanent smile on his face, was his company's gunslinger and negotiator. Business trips like this one, though not common, happened several times a year. This week-long business trip was scheduled for Saturday. He planned to board a plane from Los Angeles at 9:15 p.m. on Saturday night. Since he was scheduled to arrive in Seattle after midnight, he insisted that Susan not meet him at SeaTac Airport. He planned to take a shuttle bus home. It would get him to Bellevue by 1:30 in the morning. Early hurried to the Los Angeles airport and changed his tickets. By 1:45 p.m., he was on the plane. In the air, he used the in-flight phone to call home and let Susan know he'd be home in the afternoon, but of course she was at work. So he dug through his briefcase and pulled out her office number and tried to call her at work. "Jensen, Sharon, and Anderson, how can I help you?" The receptionist greeted him. "Where's Jennifer?" asked Early. Jennifer was Susan's personal secretary. His calls usually went straight to her desk. "Mrs. Conroy's secretary is out of the office today and tomorrow. May I help you?" The receptionist answered cheerfully. "Well then, may I speak to Mrs. Conroy?" he asked. "Mrs. Conroy? She's, to whom may I say her name is?" replied the suddenly slightly flustered secretary. "It's her husband. Put me through, please," he requested. After a noticeably short pause, the reply followed. "Oh, Mrs. Conroy is busy right now, and I don't know when she'll be free. May I leave her a message?" Early thought for a moment. "No. I'll talk to her at home tonight. Just tell her I called," and hung up. Something about that call didn't feel right, but it took him another half-hour to figure out what it was. Susan had told him on the phone last night that she would be in the office all day today. Still, it was possible that she was working on a legal case or with a client and couldn't be distracted. The real sticking point was Jennifer's absence. Susan made sure that Jennifer worked the same hours that she did. The only times Jennifer wasn't in the office when Susan was working were when she was sick with the flu, and the few times Jennifer herself left the office for personal business. The plane landed in Seattle on time and was home by 6:35 p.m. Susan was not home and the house was dark, which was surprising. His wife was almost always home by 6 p.m. Early unpacked, throwing the dirty laundry in the laundry basket, and then changed his clothes. When Susan wasn't home by 8 o'clock, he made himself a grilled cheese sandwich for dinner. Then he settled down in front of the television to wait for Susan. When Susan still hadn't returned from work, he began to worry. Maybe she'd had an accident. But if something like that had happened, someone would have called home, and if they weren't home, at least they would have left a message. He was too restless with worry about Susan to sit still, and he began pacing the floor. He dialed her cell phone number but got a message that her number was unavailable. Probably, he thought, because the phone was turned off. I wonder why she would want to turn it off. A hint that something was wrong flared at 9:20 when his own cell phone rang. Picking up the phone, he found Susan on the other end. "Early, I was beginning to think something had gone wrong," were the first words out of her mouth. There was concern in her voice. "I called the hotel as usual after dinner, and they told me you had checked out. Are you okay?" "Yeah, just had a slight change of plans," he replied. "Where are you?" "I'm at home. Just finished cleaning the kitchen. It's been lonely here tonight. Are you coming home on Sunday as planned, and where are you staying?" "Well, I'll be home all day Sunday, no problem. We moved our talks to their company headquarters this morning. You can reach me on my cell phone," he replied, glancing around the dark, deserted kitchen. His wife wasn't there, and the dishes left over from his change of dishes were cluttering the sink. "Did anything unusual happen today? I tried calling your office this afternoon. Oh, well, no, nothing much. I guess I was connected with John Stickner at the time. He helped me out with that mess with the Melrose account this week. I owe him a great debt for that, she said, in a voice that seemed to have a hidden meaning in it that Rano couldn't fathom. Darling, after I was able to turn this disaster around, it looks like I'm going to get that partnership. Mr. Jensen practically promised it to me, exclaimed Susan. Isn't that great? Sure, honey, we'll have to celebrate. Too bad I wasn't here tonight to start the celebration. Don't worry about that, honey. We can start our fiesta on Sunday when you get home. Don't be late. I miss you so much. It's going to be lonely without you in this big bed tonight. After chatting for a few minutes about domestic problems, the connection broke off. Rano sat thinking about how many lies Susan had dumped on him tonight, his stomach twisting and rumbling, a sour taste in his mouth. Until tonight, he had thought his marriage and their love were solid and strong. He'd never doubted that. Now he wasn't so sure. He went to bed early, tossing and turning for several hours before he finally fell asleep, alone in the big bed Susan had complained about. He woke up at 7 o'clock, eyes wide open and staring at the ceiling, trying to plan his day. By 9 o'clock, he realized that Susan wasn't coming home. He called her office. When a receptionist answered instead of Jennifer, he simply asked if he could speak to Mrs. Conroy. When she said Mrs. Conroy was not available, he thanked her, told her it was not an urgent problem, and that he would call again Monday morning. Oh, that should be fine. We expect Mrs. Conroy in the office by 9 o'clock Monday. You can call her then, was the friendly reply. Pulling the information from his wife's office Rolodex, Early climbed into their SUV. They had purchased the dark green Explorer to tow a camping trailer and rarely drove it, except on trips to the Cascade Mountains or outings with the trailer. To those who knew it, it was an unknown vehicle. Leaving the Mercedes in the garage, he drove to Susan's office in Bellevue. Driving slowly through the parking lot, he made sure Susan's gray BMW wasn't there. With a sinking heart, he went in search of the address he'd found in her Rolodex, John Stickner's house. He found it in a wooded area in the upscale Medina neighborhood. The property was enclosed by an 8-foot red brick fence and heavily shaded by tall spruce trees. As he drove by, he saw Susan's BMW parked next to the garage, not blocking the circular driveway. His vision suddenly blurred, and he pulled off to the side of the road until he could calm down and dry his eyes. He drove into Bellevue early in the morning and stopped for breakfast so late he had to call it a brunch. It was 11:30 when he sat down at the table and ordered a Belgian waffle and tea. His stomach was too upset to drink coffee, and he wasn't sure he could eat the waffle. He ate slowly, struggling to make each bite stay in place, but he finally finished, paid, and left the restaurant an hour later. Driving slowly, he returned to the road past Stickner's house. Susan's car was still there. Driving aimlessly for over an hour, he drove past Stickner's house again. His wife's car was still parked there. He drove home reflecting on what was left of his marriage and the life he had enjoyed. He wondered if he would ever be able to smile again. He spent the rest of the day hanging around the house. He couldn't make himself a meal and periodically satisfied his hunger by eating snacks, fruit juices, and Coke. The only respite was another call from Susan on his cell phone at 9:45 when he was getting ready for bed. She was complaining again about how big and lonely their bed was without him. Rano only hummed, trying not to sound sullen when he told her that she didn't know how lonely such a big bed could be. Susan was puzzled and asked what he meant. He brushed off the remark, agreeing that she was very, very lonely when she was alone. After hanging up, he said that he loved her more than his own life. At midnight, he finally forced himself to go to bed. He was tormented by thoughts. Did she love him at all? Was she trying to punish him for something? No, it wasn't him. It was her. What was wrong? What else did she want? Could he give her that? What could he do to make things right? He mused through another night and woke up at 8 in the morning. Early was sitting in the living room, pulling up the blinds and turning out the lights, when he heard Susan's BMW pull into the garage. It was almost 10 o'clock. A moment later, she walked through the door from the garage into the kitchen, carrying a small overnight bag in her hand. Sitting in his oversized dark leather chaise lounge, he saw her enter. She was wearing a plaid skirt from Campbell's and a bright red sleeveless blouse. The top 2 buttons of the silk blouse were undone. She looked fresh and rested as she walked through the kitchen. On her slender throat shimmered the Thai cloisonné necklace given to him on their 3rd wedding anniversary. Halfway through, she stopped, looking at the mess in the kitchen sink. Rano hadn't bothered to put away the breakfast dishes, or even put the dirty glasses left the night before in the dishwasher. The kettle on the stove, in which the water was heating, had not escaped Susan's attention. Susan gingerly looked around the room. Slowly, cautiously, she walked through the kitchen, the light coming in only through the closed curtains. In the dining room, she paused, peering at the curtains covering the sliding glass doors to the patio. She looked around every corner of the room before making her way inside. Dropping her bag on a chair in the dining room, she walked stealthily through the living room to the fireplace. Taking the poker in hand, she turned to face the room. At that moment, Rano, sitting quietly in the chair, brought the cup to his lips to take a sip of tea, drawing her attention to his shadowy presence. "Oh my God, Rano, you scared me to death. When did you get home?" asked Susan in a trembling voice. Early let the silence linger. Only a few minutes had passed, but it seemed much longer before he answered. His voice, usually so lively and energetic, sounded dead. "A couple days." Susan's knees buckled, and she stepped back, half falling into the blue and white striped chair across from her husband. A look of shock froze on her face. "Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you call me? Where are you staying?" she asked. Taking another sip of tea, Ranny replied in a voice devoid of any emotion. "I did call. I called on Thursday afternoon. You weren't home and you weren't at the office. Jennifer wasn't there either." Letting the silence linger again, he took another sip of tea. "I was sitting here in my chair when you called. I spent the night in that big, lonely bed you told me about." Outside, in the warm glow of the Saturday sun, a car drove by. 2 neighborhood children began to argue loudly, and one of their dogs began to bark loudly. The living room, where all the curtains and blinds were drawn, was in semi-darkness. The only sound was Susan's strangled sobs. Taking another sip of tea, Rano continued in the same dead, even voice. "Somehow I think the bed you were lying in on Thursday and Friday wasn't so lonely. Would you care to tell me about it, Susan? Can you let me know what happened?" Susan was already openly sobbing, her head shaking from side to side and her face hidden in her hands. "Early, I love you. This has nothing to do with you, with us. Please try to understand. It was something I felt I had to do. It had nothing to do with my love for you, for us." "It doesn't make sense, Susan. How can your cheating on me, cuckolding me, have nothing to do with us?" "It was something I felt I had to do, Early. I was trying to repay John for what he did for me. It had nothing to do with what I feel for you, with my love for you." Rano sat in silence, watching his wife sipping his tea, until he finally got up to fill his cup. From the kitchen, he asked Susan if she wanted anything. She shook her head without looking at him. Nor did she watch as he returned to his chair. "Well, wife, tell me why you think you owe Stickner, and that justifies breaking your wedding vows to me." A sudden thought struck him. "Didn't he blackmail you before he gave you the necessary assistance on the Melrose account?" "No. Oh no, he wouldn't do anything of the sort. He is a very honorable man. He only did so because he wanted to help me and knew it wasn't my fault that things were so messed up. He would never ask for something like this. He didn't expect to get anything out of it. So, since he didn't ask, was too honorable to even suggest you break your oath, Why did you volunteer? Am I understanding this correctly? What am I missing? You sound so tasteless. It wasn't like that. It was what he deserved. I repeat to you, it had nothing to do with you and me. With us. So I did something wrong? I have some kind of problem that led to this? Susan almost shouted. No! I repeat to you that you had nothing to do with it. I had to thank him somehow for what he did for me. When he helped me with Melrose, he did it for you and for me. His help is good for both of us. It wasn't done for me, it was done for him. And it has nothing to do with my love for you. After a moment's reflection, he asked slowly, agonizingly, since you were so upset because my description of your date seemed dirty and vile, does that mean it was beautiful to you? The silence lingered again before Rano broke it. Remember, Susan, how I always told you, promised you, that I belonged to you? And you always told me you belonged to me. Many times you told me you were all mine, usually for no reason at all. Do you remember when I told you that I believed we belonged together? Do you remember that? Rano's voice sounded flat, expressionless. But Susan heard the tremor in his words. Rano, yes, I do belong to you. It has nothing to do with you, nothing to do with us. Oh, Susan, how can you say one thing and then another so contradictory? Don't you see the contradiction? You gave away what was most important to me, what I was most proud of in the world, yourself. You gave her to another man. And sitting here, listening to you talk, I'm beginning to believe that you don't value intimacy with yourself. You gave it away to a man who, according to you, didn't even ask for it. Listening to you talk, I'm beginning to think you had to beg him to take it. So you're saying I had nothing to do with it, he added in a quiet, hopeless voice. But that didn't mean anything, Early. I'm still here. Nothing has changed in me. I love you wholeheartedly. I am yours, Susan sobbed. Susan, everything we experience changes us. You just got back from spending 2 nights in another man's bed. Here Rano paused, his voice trailing off. You did intimate things with another man that should only be shared with the man you love. With a sob, he asked, How many nights did you spend with him, Susan? Was it just those 2? How many others were there? After a long pause, when he was able to get his emotions under control, he continued. Now his voice was again devoid of emotion. And help me, Susan. I can't help but wonder how many other men have deserved what belonged to me. You tell me you're mine, and then you give yourself away frivolously. Susan's body shook with sobs, and her head shook, denying Rano's words. She seemed to shrink into a lump. Her shoulders slumped, her elbows resting on her knees, her face buried in her hands, her hair spilling over her face. Long, long minutes passed. The man sat silently in his chair, looking thoughtfully at his wife, who was now huddled in the chair opposite him. The room was in semi-darkness, and the only sounds came from the outside world, where the residents of the neighborhood were enjoying a quiet, sunny Saturday. No sound was heard in the room, except Susan's sobs, until the wall clock began to mutedly chime noon. Susan, I don't know where we're going. I swear I love you as much now as I did on Sunday when I left for Los Angeles. But I don't know where we are. You keep telling me that your betrayal has nothing to do with me. You don't realize what you've done. My trust in you is gone, and I don't know how I can get it back, what you can do to earn it. After a moment, Rano continued. If you're suggesting that I go and deceive you, which will balance the scales, then we're finished. First, if you care so little for my loyalty, it shows how cheaply you value it. Second, 2 wrongs don't make a right. 2 injustices are twice as bad as 1. He rose slowly from his chair, set the empty teacup on the fireplace hearth, and made his way to the dining room. There, he slid the curtains open and stepped out into the bright, spotlessly clean backyard. He spoke in a voice she had to strain to hear. Susan, I want to shake you. Shake you so hard your teeth will ring. I've never wanted to hurt a woman before, much less my wife. My love. It would be a very bad idea if I were to meet John Stickner now, despite your implication that it was you who seduced him. Susan made a soft sound, perhaps denying that she had seduced John. Early continued, "You're telling me it wasn't his idea. Just to throw you another little problem, now that he has tasted your fruits, which came to him without any effort on his part, will he not expect those fruits to continue to be available to him? No matter what you have explained to him, he must now regard you as an easy prey." Susan's protest was cut short when he spoke over her words. "He may not consider you available to anyone, but he will consider you available to him. You are easy for him. In time, he will lose a lot of respect and value for you. Wife, if we want this marriage to work out somehow, we're going to have to face this, hour after hour, day after day, week after week in this house, while we try to reconnect." Taking a long breath, he continued, almost in a whisper, "I don't know if it can be done. I know we can't make any decisions today. It will be months, maybe years, before we can truly feel comfortable with each other again. Tonight I will sleep in the guest room. Tomorrow we will replace our double bed with a full bed for each of us. The master bedroom is spacious enough. If we work hard at it, we can probably manage it if we both want it to work out. At this point, I'm questioning whether you want it to. For now, this is the best I can do." Turning, he peered into the living room again, as if into a dark cave after looking out into the sunny backyard. "I want to give it a try. We can talk about what marriage means to each of us in the coming months. Maybe we can salvage it. Susan, I love you." Opening the glass doors to the patio, he stepped outside. As he closed the door, he heard his wife sobbing.